I wish I read this much in 1 month, but I don't. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through all of the books I read in August and September. I think this is the second time that I've combined 2 months in one reading wrap up because I just felt like I didn't have enough to talk about in the 1 month. So here we are. Total, I read 11 books, and then I had one that I got like halfway through and gave a soft DNF, so I still want to talk about it. So let's just get right into it, starting with my first book, The Will of the Many by James Islington. It was so long ago that I read this book that I have to look at my notes on Notion. I do not remember a lot about this. First off, what is this? It is not a very popular book, so I have not heard anybody talk about it yet on BookTube or Book Talk. But this is by the same author as the Lacanius trilogy, which is my favorite and kind of only completed fantasy series that I've read. This is his new release that came out a couple of months ago. It's the first book in what I believe will be another trilogy. And his books are pretty thick. This one is not as long as his others, but they are dense, they are thick, they take a while to get through. And this book took me 3 weeks. This book right here is the reason why I didn't read as much as I normally do, or as much as I would have liked to in August. And just because it took me 3 weeks doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it. It just took me forever. And I did not take any breaks in between. I didn't pick up any other books in the middle of this, I don't think. I just read this all the way through. Even though I've already read this, I don't know how much I can really explain. I feel like fantasy books like this are really hard for me to explain. And even like in this one, reading the inside flap that talks about the book, after reading it, this flap I feel like tells you nothing. And I feel like it's kind of misleading actually. So I'm just gonna give you the briefest of explanations because otherwise I'll butcher it or we'll be here for forever. This is in a world where there's a hierarchy and people cede their will, which is essentially like their, I guess, mental and physical power to someone else. It's a pyramid, so at the bottom of the pyramid, those people are not receiving anybody else's will, but they are ceding it to people above them, and then those people are also ceding some of their will to the people above them. And at the top of the pyramid, there are very few people. I think there might only be 3 actually. And they are each receiving the will of, it says like over 40,000 people. So it is a very politics heavy fantasy and it deals a lot with like the struggle of power. Our main character Viz has never ceded his will to anybody and he refuses to. He does not like the hierarchy and he refuses to be a part of it, which is kind of a no-no. I think because he is still kind of a child, he's like 16 or 17, he kind of gets away with it and he says, oh, when I reach like a certain age, I'll do it, but he really just does not want to. There's this elite academy that like the best of the best students go to, mostly like the rich people, like their parents are at the top of the hierarchy. They go to this academy and he ends up going there. And I feel like I can't really say anything else without kind of giving stuff away. It started off a little bit slow for me. I was a little confused at the beginning and it's just about 600 pages and the pages are like dense pages. Like the margins are very small and there's a lot of words on here. So his books, it's like 600 pages. I've read 600 page books that are not that bad. This could definitely be formatted to be longer than 600 pages. So the fact that it took me like halfway through before I got really into the story was kind of a bummer. I do definitely feel like this is way longer than it needs to be. I think that a few hundred pages could have been cut out of this. I did really like once he got to the academy, that was when things really picked up and it was a lot more fun after that. Once we hit that point, which like I said was like halfway through, I was pretty hooked. I still took a really long time to finish it, but I was really enjoying it and like wanting to get to the end to find out what was gonna happen. It's a very plot heavy book and unfortunately I didn't really connect with the characters that much. Even towards the end, it was like, I didn't really care about them. There were a couple of side characters that I did like, but the main character, I didn't connect with him as much as I wish I did. In the Lacanius trilogy, I really loved the characters, and maybe that was because we actually got their point of view, whereas this is all just third person, and it doesn't switch POVs. But Lacanius had one of my favorite characters, Caden, and then this one, I just didn't really care for the characters at all, so that kind of stunk. But the plot itself, once it picked up, was really fun. I do have a lot of unanswered questions. I'm excited for the next book, but at the same time, I'm like, when it comes out, I have to read another book this size that probably has a lot of stuff that I could do without. It sounds like I have a lot of negativity, but I did give this book 4 stars. Overall, I definitely enjoyed it. I only recommend this if you are really into fantasy and you're into like politics, plot heavy stuff, and if you're okay with a lack of character development. And also romance, there is no romance in this practically. So if you're a romantic girly, then this is not for you. After that, I wanted just a quick, easy, fun read. So I picked up Troubles in Paradise by Ellen Hilderbrand, which is the second book in the Paradise series. I think that's what it's called. I've talked about this before, but this series is about a woman who finds out that her husband died in a helicopter crash, and her 2 sons go to St. John, where the crash was, and they find out that he has been leading this whole secret life. That is what the first book is about. I don't want to talk about the other books because I don't want to spoil anything that happens, but this is just a fun, easy, general fiction book. There is a little bit of romance, there is family drama, that sort of thing. I did not read these back to back, but I might as well talk about it now. I did read the third one, which is What Happens in Paradise. I really enjoyed this series. I gave it a 3.5 stars overall, so it wasn't anything spectacular that I would like run out and recommend that you read immediately, but it's just a fun, easy read. I kind of sprinkled these in between other reads, so I kind of treated it like a palate cleanser series, and I enjoyed it. Next starts my rabbit hole obsession that I have gone down of Jennifer Lynn Barnes books, because I finally started The Inheritance Games, and I get the hype. I understand why this had so much hype around it years ago. I don't know why I waited so long to read it. Just kidding, I do know why. But I am so glad that I finally picked this up. I read all 3 books, I think, in the month of August and was just in love. I'm so glad that I finally picked this up. I gave the first book a 5 stars. It was just so much fun. I know I describe pretty much any book that I enjoy as fun, but this really was like fun. It's just a bunch of riddles and clues and you're following along, and it's just, fun is really the best word. It's entertaining. I ate this up. It just is great. If you don't know what the series is, this is about Avery, who one day finds out that she was left in the will of Tobias Hawthorne, who is this billionaire, like one of the richest men in the world, and she's expecting maybe a couple $1,000s. She's like, I don't know this man or why he left me in his will, but maybe I'm some sort of charity case, and he leaves his entire fortune to her. The one condition is that she has to live in his mansion for a full year, and that mansion is full of his family who are pissed off because they've all just been screwed out of their inheritance. So you are following Avery and trying to figure out, why on earth did this man leave her all of his fortune? There is a romance subplot and it is a love triangle, but I have to admit it was a love triangle that I didn't hate. I loved all the characters. This is a super fast-paced book, and like I said, you're just solving a bunch of clues and riddles. I didn't read them all back to back, but I was loving them and I did read all 3 books. The first book was a 5 star. It was actually the first 5 star that I gave since February, so I was so happy to finally have another. I actually read this in a reading vlog, so if you want to see my reactions while reading this book, especially at the end, then I'll link that video somewhere. The second one, Hawthorne Legacy, was I think a 4.5 stars? Yeah, 4.5 stars. And then Final Gambit was a 4 stars. I don't remember why I rated them progressively lower, but I feel like I just never got the same 5-star feeling that I did in the first one, even though I was still really loving them. Then I read His and Hers by Alice Feeney, and I was a little nervous for this one because it's my 3rd Alice Feeney book. I read Rock, Paper, Scissors, loved it, and then Sometimes I Lie, which I was just so bored by. So I was nervous about whether I would like this one or not, but I ended up really liking this. I gave it 4 stars, and it was just one of those thrillers that I could not put down. I like to go into thrillers with as little information as possible, and the synopsis on the back is really short, so I'm just going to read you that. When a woman is murdered in Blackdown, newsreader Anna Andrews is reluctant to cover the case. Detective Jack Harper is suspicious of her involvement until he becomes a suspect in his own murder investigation. There are 2 sides of every story, yours and mine, ours and theirs, his and hers, which means someone is always lying. In my notes, I wrote that the beginning was just a little bit slow for me, but once I got into this, I was hooked. But I will say that this book covers some heavy topics, and I felt pretty uncomfy at some points. I'm someone who I feel like can read pretty much anything, and I might feel uncomfy, but it doesn't really bother me. I can still read it. But if you know that there are topics that you don't want to read about, I would definitely look up the trigger warnings, because some parts got pretty graphic, and I could definitely see this not being the book for some people. But if you do feel comfortable reading it, I don't feel like it was a part that ruined the book for me. It just definitely felt uncomfy at some points. Overall, I really had fun reading this. I just wouldn't go out there and recommend it to anybody and everybody. Honestly, I was pretty bad about reading the books that were on my TBR for September, and part of that is because I'm dumb and I forgot about a couple of books that I needed to read this month that I didn't put on my TBR. The first one is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And I had to read this because I have a book club that's actually meeting tomorrow, and this was our book club book. It's my first in-person book club thing, so I definitely wanted to make sure that I read the book and was prepared. I had never read a Lisa Jewell book before, but we picked this because we thought it would be fun. She's a really well-known author, and it's her new release, so nobody had read it. This is about two women who are both celebrating their birthdays at a restaurant, and they meet and they find out that they're birthday twins. They were actually born on the same day in the same hospital. One of them is a podcaster. She has a series where she interviews women who have dramatically changed their lives. And the other woman is like, hey, I know you do these podcasts. How about you do a podcast about me? But actually, I haven't changed my life yet, but I'm going to. So you should just do a whole series about me. And Alex, the podcaster, is like, I don't know about that. That sounds kind of boring. I don't know if I want to take that chance on you. But then she ends up finding out more about the other woman's life, and she's like, maybe there actually is something here. Like, there's some crazy, weird things going on. And from the beginning, I feel like Lisa Jewell did a really great job of putting in all these little tiny tidbits of information that just kept me questioning and wanting to find out like what was really happening there. So it only took me about 50 pages to really get sucked into this book, and I just kind of couldn't put it down. It's sitting at about a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time reading, but there's just not many thrillers that I rate above a 4-star, and I didn't feel like this did anything better than His and Hers or the other ones that I really liked but gave 4 stars. Then I picked up the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, which was on my TBR for September. But this is the book that I got a little less than halfway through, and I'm giving it a soft DNF for now. This is a somewhat whimsical, historical, fantasy, romance, fiction kind of thing. This is set in, I think it's supposed to be like the 1800s, but it's a world where there's a little bit of magic. The magic is mostly floating houses. There are these spells that can make houses float or fly, and like you can drive them places. But that's kind of the only magic in here, I think. I liked the vibe of this book. It is about these women who are pirates, and they're very like, I'm prim and proper, I'm a lady, I act like a lady, but then they're pirates and they're stealing stuff and they're killing people and like not batting an eye, but like they're doing it with grace. And I think the main plot is that there is this assassin who is sent after our main character, Cecilia, and at the very beginning of the book, she finds out that he is trying to kill her, and she's talking to her aunt. She's like, oh my, I finally have my first assassin. This is like a big moment for me. And she doesn't care at all. Like, she just turns her back to him. She's like, I don't care. Like, he's not gonna kill me. So that's kind of the vibe that we're working with. And eventually it turns into a romance between the two of them. I didn't quite get that far, but the reason that I am putting it down, at least for now, is I just found it kind of boring. For me, the plot is just moving pretty slow and there's not really anything exciting going on, so I just never was wanting to pick it up. I would maybe get like half a chapter through and then I would just want to pick up my phone. And eventually I was like, you know what? Maybe I would like this at another time, but for now, this is just not for me. I don't know if I'll ever actually get back to it, but it's not a book that I hated and am DNFing and saying like, oh, I didn't enjoy it. Because I enjoyed parts of it, but I just wasn't enjoying it enough to keep reading it when I was bored. Does that make sense? I was really hoping to love this one, but you know, it is what it is. Last books to go through, I finally started The Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is not a new series, but I'm sure you know that everybody has been loving this for the past few months, and I see why. I am absolutely obsessed, and I'm so glad that I finally picked up these books. If you have not read this yet, and you like young adult, and you like Criminal Minds, then you have to read this right away, because that is exactly what these are. I do not know the last time I have been this obsessed with a book or a series. Like, I'm loving this even more than the Inheritance Games. And when I was reading the Inheritance Games, I was like, nothing will top this month. Like, this is the best I'm gonna get this month. Chances are you've either read this or you've already heard of it, but if you have not, this is about an FBI program that recruits teenagers who are called naturals. So they are just people with natural gifts. When people first started talking about this, I assumed they were talking about like some sort of supernatural abilities, but it's not. One of them is really great at numbers. She is like the Spencer Reid of Criminal Minds. One of them is really good at reading emotions. One's a really good liar and can detect lies, and then the others are profilers. Our main character is Cassie, and you follow her being recruited into the Naturals program, and what they do is they work on cold cases. But of course, they just don't work on cold cases the whole time. They get roped into an ongoing case, and it is so much fun. I love these characters. I love the story. This whole series so far is a 5-star for me. I've read the first 3, and I'm about like 50 pages, I think, into the last book. The first 3 are obviously The Naturals, Killer Instinct, and All In. I think this one might be my favorite because, like everybody else, I love Sloane, and we get a lot more of her in this book. If you take anything away from this video, it should be that you need to read the Naturals series. There's no reason not to. I mean, if you like YA and you like Criminal Minds mystery thrillers, then you would love it. And because it's YA and Jennifer Lynn Barnes just writes really fast-paced books, they are so easy to get through. The first 3 are only 300 pages, but the font is huge. So they are really less than like an actual 300-page book, and the 4th one is only 400 pages. Can you tell that I am really obsessed with this series? I might not have read a million books in these months, but I had some really great reads. Some of my favorites of the year probably. So I'm so happy with what I read. I cannot wait to finish The Naturals and then dig into my more fall-themed books that I have on my October TBR. So that's all I've got for the books that I read in August and September. I hope that you enjoyed watching and maybe got some new recommendations. Let me know what you read the last couple months, and if you have any recommendations for me to add to my TBR, I'm always looking to add to the list. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye!